Okay, we are picking up on Nun Beis, Amud Beis. We are at the first wide line, and we're doing the next case in the Mishnah. Again, the Mishnah had started by going through. There were 8 differences that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argued about what the halacha was in terms of various parts of the Suda. So we're up to the next one in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, Beis Shammai Yomer B'chavdin, that Beis Shammai said that first you sweep the house up for all the crumbs, and then you go wash Mayim Achronim. And Beis Hillel says that first you wash Mayim Achronim, and then you sweep up all the crumbs. So the Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan. Beis Shammai Yomrim Mechavdin Asabayis. So first you're supposed to sweep the house, and then afterwards you're going to wash your hands from Mayim Achronim. Shema to Omer Noten Le'yadayim Tchila, because if you're going to say that first you should wash your hands and then you should go ahead and sweep the house, so Nimsa Atamafsid Asa Ochlin, it's going to turn out that you're going to ruin the food. Why? Because a person's going to wash Mayim Achronim, and then his hands are going to be wet, and there's going to be bread that's going to be on the table, so you're going to be like moving the food off the table at that time, and you don't want to be eating soggy bread, so your wet hands are going to touch the bread, and it's going to ruin it because no one's going to want to eat it afterwards. So therefore they say, from a practical point of view, better you should first sweep the house, get rid of all the food that's on the table and that's on the floor. You know, if pieces of bread fell on the floor and you want to pick them up, and then afterwards you wash Mayim Achronim, so you're not going to ruin the bread. Gemara says, actually the Mefarshim say that you don't really, because this next line is not really adding anything. They take it out. Beis Hillel says, that if the waiter is a Talmid Chacham, which doesn't mean that necessarily like he's he's a Gadol Adar, but it means that he's familiar with the halachos of a Suda. He knows what all the halachos are that go in when someone's eating a meal. So if the waiter is someone that's a Talmid Chacham that knows the halachos of a meal, notel pirurin sheyesh behem kazayis, he's going to take away the pieces of bread before you wash Mayim Achronim. U'meniach pirurin sheyesh behem kazayis, he's only going to leave over the little crumbs that don't have a kazayis, which don't amount to anything anyway. And you're going to be able to, no one cares if you get that, if that's going to be disgusting. So therefore they say, better that you should wash Mayim Achronim first, because by the time you come back to the table and you want to start cleaning up the area, the waiter's already going to have cleared away the big pieces of bread, because he knows that you shouldn't leave it on there so it doesn't get ruined by your wet hands. So Masai Leila Rabbi Yochanan, this is the proof to Rabbi Yochanan, Dam Rabbi Yochanan, Perurin she'ein b'hen kazayis motel adam biyad. That if you have pieces of bread that are less than a kazayis, you can destroy them right away. And what's the proof? Because you see that Beis Hillel says that the waiter is going to move away the big pieces of bread, but the little pieces of bread, he's just going to kind of like, no one cares about the little crumbs that are on the table, because again, that's not something that we're worried about. So you see that you were able to destroy immediately little pieces of bread that are less than a kazayis. You don't have to worry about that being a concept of Baal Tashkis. The Gemara explains, so what is it that Beis Shammai and Hillel are arguing about? So Beis Hillel holds so you're not allowed to use a waiter who is not a Talmid Chacham, who's an Amma Aretz, right? Because he's not going to know what the halachos are. So he's going to leave the big pieces of bread on the table. They're going to get wet from your hands from Mayim Achronim, and it's going to ruin it. So therefore, they say you're not allowed to use an Amma Aretz waiter. So if you only are using someone who's a Talmid Chacham, you don't have to worry that there's going to be bread left on the table, because the Talmid Chacham waiter is going to know enough to remove the bread before you come back from washing Mayim Achronim. Beis Shammai Savri, Mutar l'shtamesh b'shamash ha'aretz, you're allowed to use a waiter who's an Amma Aretz. So therefore, they say better that you should first clean the table, because the waiter Amma Aretz is going to leave the bread on the table. So better to first clear the table, and then only afterwards you should wash Mayim Achronim. So what do we pass? Who do we pass like? Amar Rav Yossi Bar Chanina, Amar Rav Huna, Bekula Pirkin Halach Beis Hillel. That normally in the whole parak, this again, it's a very short parak. It's only 2.5 blot. But for all the cases that are brought down in the Mishnah, we hold like Beis Hillel in every single case, except Bar Miha, except for this case right here, the Halacha Beis Shammai, because the Halacha is like Beis Shammai, because it makes sense that we're worried that you're going to ruin the bread when you wash Mayim Achronim. Rav Oshia Masi Ibcha, and Rav Oshia says no. Actually, turn it around, meaning it's Beis Hillel that says that first you should clear the table and then wash your hands. So that the halacha is like Beis Hillel in each and every case. So they change. Rav Oshia changes the lashon of the Mishnah. He says that it was written down incorrectly, and really it's Beis Hillel who says that first you should clear the table and then wash Mayim Achronim, not Beis Shammai. So that is what the halacha is. That again, that you're supposed to first clear uvahanami halacha Beis Hillel. So therefore, the halacha is like Beis Hillel in all the cases of the Mishnah. Okay, the next case of the Mishnah brought down what the order was when someone has they're going to be benching, they're going to have to make havdalah, and they have benching havdalah, and they have besamim, and it's Matzah Shabbos also. So what's the order that you're supposed to be doing things? So Beishami Yomrim Ner Mazon. So the Mishnah brought down that they said they're supposed to do Ner the Mazon. So Rav Huna Bar Yehuda Ikla Lebei Rava. Rav Huna Bar Yehuda went to the house of Rava. Chazi LeRava Debarich Abesamim Bereishon. He saw that Rava was making a bracha on besamim. Barim Ne Besamim. He made a bracha on the besamim first, and then he lit the candle. So Amar Leh, he said to him, Michti Beishami Beis Hillel Amar Lo Pligi. Beishami and Hillel both agree that candle is that the candle is supposed to come first, that it's supposed to come before the bracha b'samim. The Tanan that we learned in the Mishnah, Beishami Yom. Again, this is according to this version of the Mishnah. We're going to quickly, because the way we do it at home is that we first make a bracha on b'samim and then we do barim me'orei ha'esh, which is the way that's halacha, and that's what the next brayso is going to point out. But the way that we have it written right now, we said the Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. The order is you're supposed to do first, you do the candle, you do barim me'orei ha'esh, then you do benching, then you do besamim, and then you do avdalah. And they say that you're supposed to do ner, besamim, mazon, avdalah. But you see that in all these cases, that flame is all that the ner is always supposed to come first. Why did you reverse the order? So Ani Rava Basrei, Rava said to him that you got the wrong one. Zu Divri Reb Meir. It's only according to Reb Meir. Avol Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda says lo nechelku Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, that they don't argue al hamazon shu batchila, that first you're supposed to do benching. Ve'al havdalah shu b'sof, and that havdalah is going to be at the end. Amar nechelku, what is it that they argue about? So al hamar v'al they order and they argue in what the order is when you have to do candle and you have to do the besamim. Shebeishami yomrim al hamar v'achar kach besamim. They say Beis Shammai says that first you do it on the candle and then you do it on the besamim. Ubeis Hillel omrim, like we hold that besamim v'achar kach ma'or, that first you do it on the besamim and then you do it on the candle. Rabbi Yochanan nagu am kebeis Hillel alibad Rabbi Yehuda, that is the way that we are noeg. That again, when we do avdalah, first we make a bracha on barim and besamim, and then we make a bracha on barim me'orei ha'esh. Okay, next Mishnah, the next argument was Beishami Yomrim Shabara. The question was, when you make a bracha on a candle, do you say Shabara Ma'or Ha'esh, or Shabara Ma'orei Ha'esh, or do you say Barim Ma'orei Ha'esh? What is the proper wording you're supposed to be saying? So we're just going to explain the fundamentals of what the word means to explain what their argument was. Amar Rava. The bara kuli amalo pligi de bara mashma. Everyone agrees that when you say the word bara ma'orei ha'esh, that bara is indicating a past tense that Hashem created fire, and therefore for sure that's going to be good. Ki pligi bebore. The question is, when you say bore ma'orei ha'esh, which is, spoiler alert, that's the way that we do it now, so obviously bore is going to end up being okay. But the question is, what is bore? What does bore indicate when you say it? So Beis Shammai savri bore da'asu l'mivra, that bore means that Hashem will in the future create fire. So therefore, it's inappropriate. Again, what's the reason that we make a bracha on barim me'orei ha'esh by Havdalah? We make a bracha of barim me'orei ha'esh by Havdalah because Adam Harishon had gotten kicked out of Gan Eden Erev Shabbos, and then he spent Shabbos where he was it was very depressed for him, and it started getting dark, and he thinks that the world is coming to an end. And Hashem showed Adam how to do it, or some say that Hashem actually created the fire. Hashem created fire on Matzah Shabbos, which is why we make a bracha of barim me'orei ha'esh on Matzah Shabbos. So Beis Shammai is saying, if ma'orei is talking about future, it's inappropriate to say borei ma'orei ha'esh when the reason why we're lighting is because we're lighting for the creation of fire, which took place in the past. So therefore, they say that you don't say borei ma'orei ha'esh, you say borei. You don't say you say bara ma'orei ha'esh. You don't say borei ma'orei ha'esh. Beis Hillel says borei nami de bara mashma, that borei is mashma both in the past and in the future, so therefore they say you are able to say it. So Gemara says, wait a second, that's not good either. Masi Rabbi Yosef asked a question. We see many places where the word borei is going to indicate both past and future. Why? Yotzer or choshech. We say in the morning. We say every day. We say Yotzer or uvore choshech. Another place Yotzer harim uvari ruach. Another place borei hashemayim v'noteihem. So in all these places, borei is indicating not just things that Hashem that Hashem created in the past. So you see, even Beis Shammai is going to agree that borei also means something in the past. So what is it what's the basis of their argument then for what the different language is? So Elo Amar Rabbi Yosef says the bara uborei kuli amalo pligi devar mashma. Everyone agrees whether you're saying bara or whether you're saying borei. They both agree that it says something that's in the past, and you could use either one. It's going to be fine whichever word you're going to use. Ki pligi b'ma'or u'ma'orei. They argue about the question is, you say borei ma'or ha'esh or do you say borei ma'orei ha'esh? Okay, which is indicative of a plural. So the Beis Shammai savri chada nahora ika benura, that there's one flame in the candle. When you light a candle, there's one flame that's there. So therefore you say borei ma'or ha'esh, because you're only looking at one flame right now. Beis Hillel savri tuva nahare ika benura, that there are many different types of lighting that's in the fire. Because if you look at a fire, he said Rashi says that it has red, white, and yellow in the flames. Like there's different colors that are in the flames. So therefore, Beis Hillel says you say borei ma'orei because it's plural, because there's a lot of things going on in that one flame that you're looking at. There's a lot of things that are going on. We also learned that there's many different fire of lights that are in the fire, and that's why we say borei ma'orei ha'esh, which is how we paskin. Okay, the next thing in the Mishnah was talking about what type of candles, what type of flames you're able to use when you're making Havdalah. There's a question. So the Mishnah said, you're not able to do it. You're not able to do it whether it was a light that was coming from a non-Jew or if it was besamim of a non-Jew. You're not able to use that either when you're making Havdalah. So the Gemara says, Bishlama ner mishum delo Shabbos. The reason why you're not able to make a bracha on a candle of a non-Jew on Motzei Shabbos is because the flame did not rest, right? There's a whole concept of Shabbos is that we're resting. So the flame was not resting, so therefore you can't use the flame of a non-Jew because there was a forbidden act that was being done with it, so therefore you can't use it on Motzei Shabbos to make a bracha on it. El besamim, my time alone. What's the problem with besamim? There was nothing that was done with besamim. Besamim were just there. They were in a pouch. They're in your little spice rack over there that they're sitting in a can. Why can't you use the besamim of a non-Jew to make a bracha for borei minei besamim? So my answer is Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Hacha b'mesibas ovdei kochav maskin. And we're talking about that there was a party that was going on for non-Jews, and mipnei shestam mesibas ovdei kochavim lavodah zarahi, because most times when they would have these parties that were going on, they would have fragrances there, and they were being used for avodah zarah. So they're being used for idol worship. So therefore, if they're being used for idol worship, you're not able to make a bracha borei minei besamim on it. So Gemara asks, somebody Tani Sefer, but we learned in the later part of the Mishnah, we learned lo on an air, lo besamim shel avodah zarah. You're not able to make the bracha on the candle or on the besamim of avodah zarah. It must be that the first time when we said that you can't use the light and the besamim of a non-Jew, it must be talking that it was not avodah zarah, because it specified avodah zarah in the second half of the Mishnah. The first half of the Mishnah didn't say that, so it must be that we're not talking about that you were using besamim. That was at some wild non-Jewish banquet that was taking place where they had besamim that was being used for avodah zarah. When it says Amar Rav Chanina Misura Matam Kamar, the Mishnah, that the later part of the Mishnah is explaining the first half of the Mishnah, that Matam Ein Mevarach and Lal Aner Lal Besamim Shalom Tekachavim. What's the reason that you can't make a bracha on the candle or on the besamim of a non-Jew? Because most normal banquets that they would have in those days were done. There were parties for non-Jews were done, and the purpose of the party was to do idol worship. So since most of the parties that were done in those days were for idol worship, the reason why, it's just explaining, the reason why you can't light a candle from a non-Jew or use the besamim of a non-Jew is because probably they were being used for idol worship. Tana Rabbanan. So next, the Brisa taught. If you had a flame that was resting on Shabbos, you were able to make a bracha on it, you were able to make Havdalah on it. And if it was not resting, then you're not able to make a bracha on it. So what does that mean? So Gemara is going to explain. My shavas, my lo shavas. What does it mean when it says that a flame that rested you could make a bracha, and a flame that was not resting that you can't make a bracha? So turning to Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, "Inema lo shavas machmas v'lacha afilu malacha dehatera." If you're going to say that it's talking about that it didn't rest even from a permitted type of lighting that was taking place, and the Gemara is going to explain what that means now, that can't be what the explanation is. Why? Tanya, we learned in a brisa, or shalchaya v'shalchola mevarchin alav, that there's, if you have a woman that's in childbirth, or you have someone that's sick, and you have to light a candle for them, you have to light whatever, you need a flame to do whatever reason you're going to be doing. So that's mutter, you're able to do it. So it can't be, and you're able to use that to make havdalah on it. So it can't be that any candle that was lit, even for a permitted reason, they're not going to be able to make a bracha on it, because again, you could have instances where, if there's sakanas nefashos, you're absolutely allowed to violate Shabbos in order to save a life. So you're able to light a candle if you need it for a woman in childbirth and you need the light to be able to see, or if someone's sick and you need it because maybe they need the heat or whatever it is, so you're able to do it. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman Yitzchak, my Shabbos, what does it mean that a flame that was resting? It means Shabbos machmas malachas aveira. It means it was rested. So you could use a flame that was lit. That again, if it was lit behetera, if it was lit for a mutter reason, you were able to use it to make a bracha on it Matzah Shabbos when you're making Havdalah. The Gemara's taught, the Mishnah's talking when it says you can't use a flame that was not resting. It's talking about that it was for an aveira, meaning it was not lit for a permissible reason. Then you're not able to use that flame, and you'd have to create a new flame or use one that had been lit already from Erev Shabbos. Tani Nami Hachu, we also learned similarly in another brisa, Ashashis Shahaiso Dolekas Olechas Kol Yom Kula. If you have a lantern that was lit the whole Shabbos, meaning you lit it Friday night, and it lit, and by Matzah Shabbos it was still like you have with these 24-hour yard site candles that you could light them Erev Shabbos, and they'll go for 24 hours. So even though the flame is quote unquote alive on Shabbos, even though it was lit on Shabbos, still you're able to use it on Matzah Shabbos. You are able to use it on Matzah Shabbos to make a bracha on it. So you see that even though the fire was burning on Shabbos and it wasn't Shabbos, it was not resting, but if it's for a permitted reason, again like sakanas nefashos, or if it was something that had been done before Shabbos started, so there was no violation, there was no aveira that you did, but you're allowed to have a lantern lit the entire Shabbos, right? Isn't that the who says you can't have that you can't use electricity at all on Shabbos? That you couldn't leave the lights on Shabbos. The Tzdukim, thank you. The Tzdukim would say that you're not allowed to have that they would say that lo savaru eish b'chamosh v'seichem, that you're not allowed to have they say no, nothing. You can't have lights. You can't have fire. Nothing. It's forbidden. You're allowed to have a lantern Erev Shabbos that you light, and it's on the whole Shabbos. It's not a problem. It's only if you would light it on Shabbos that would potentially be a problem. Okay, we will stop here and we will continue tomorrow night, 8:00 again.